Hello and welcome to Turning Lewks, a beauty and cosmetics podcast. I am your host, Darren, and welcome to the second part of our conversation with JMac. I'm not going to waste too much of your time with the introduction. Let's get straight into this chat. It carries on to be a great one. We talk things drag, glow up, and the future of what James is going to be up to. So get on listening.
Here and ready to persevere as a queer.
What,
How are you?
what a catchphrase. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. It looks
I feel
so
like that'd be a
bad.
very good drag race entrance line. I'm queer, and what you just said.
Here, queer, ready to persevere. I have to say it like in Irish. Not that I haven't like imagined my own imaginary drag race entrance in that self-fulfilling fantasy we all have for sure. I was going to say something for Drag Race if I ever had done it because I'd applied for season one. Um, it would be very Irish based, but standing in my own pride, it was going to be Amal Cadago make dulgadi an letters, and like that is Irish for can I go to the toilet? But nonetheless, we would diverge from that.
I love it. I love it. You'd be the toilet queen of the season.
Exactly. Following, well, if I'd done in season one after Ginger Johnson, that toilet's blocked.
Love it. How you doing anyway, though?
I'm good. I was literally so off like the radar watching All Stars 2 because Liam and I feel the absence of Drag Race on a Saturday. So I went back and watched what I think is periodically the best. And I was just sitting there and I was like, fuck the podcast. And then I got my Outlook reminder. So I'm like, in drag time, on time.
When did drag come into it? Because that's like was a big part of like your makeup journey as well. Was like see before getting on to glow up, you were doing drag quite a lot. When did that come into it and how?
There was just always an underlying like queer eye, basically a queer perspective on what I was reading, but I wasn't even like subconsciously accepting it. I think it was so deep. I always loved like the idea of the girls going out on nights out, like the feminine style, and like Amy Winehouse's eyeliner. I was snatching it more, like even when I was doing it with shitty pencils. There was something about just an elevated style of makeup, and it was pre even drag race culture. I did, my godmother had introduced me to some John Waters at the Galway Arts Film Festival, which is on every summer in the west of Ireland. And lo and behold, I saw Divine, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, it felt rotted, ratchet. I was like 16 and petrified, but so curious. So my curiosity would propel me into a lot of fear at the same time. And I was introducing that into all of these practices on myself. So I was doing elements of drag, like I said, in my parents' bathroom as a teenager, but never fully embodying it until I moved to Dublin, went to university. I finally came out at 21, 22, and spoke to someone for the first time about saying, I'm really interested in going to the George, which is like our capital gay bar in the center of Dublin, and still there as a holy mecca. And that felt like such a big reach to me. I'm an earth baby, a water sign, highly sensitive, whether I dress it up to be better, more held together than not. And I can't express when I look back now, 10, 15 years ago, how much courage it felt like it took to just admit that. So when I got out of my shell and went to you know, the bars in Dublin, and there's a very good sister of mine who has just finished a 2 or 3 year in-house position at Sparkles in Gran Canaria. Her name is Bonnie and Clyde, and I'll give her a shout out because James out of drag also, or Bonnie, was the first queen I ever really saw physically in person at our university's fresher ball in like 2013, 14. And I remember Drag Race was starting to circulate. I'm sorry now, I'm going to backtrack. When I was in New Zealand with the last girlfriend I had before coming out. We did watch Drag Race season 6 in real time. And I'll never forget seeing Bianca Del Rio and Laganja Strange's entrance makeup. And it petrified the life out of me as much as I was like, holy shit, this is at like what I've been imagining in my mind's eye. And I thought my mind's eye was a bit twisted and was very graphic. And I saw no one else like thinking about elaborate makeup designs. Then I'm like, this shit exists. So it was a combination of, yeah, being in university, being about 21, 22, whatever the Saturn turns, and finally just speaking to someone and asking almost, can I be invited to the table? Can I be part of this community? And I want to see drag and explore it. And like I said, when I was 23 or 24, another year passed, I finally, started to practice it on myself. And that's, I suppose, the essence of where JMac was born. I never did drag in Ireland before moving to the UK. and I moved over in 2018.
So it wasn't that long ago that you actually started doing kind of drag, but you made a name for yourself quite quickly as well.
I get in certain areas. I remember meeting the sensational Stella Marbles. We all love Maddie, and I heard of you on a podcast that you had done with her, a previous podcast. I think we mentioned this before. And I remember one of my good Irish sisters who is still, in leaps and bounds breaking through the music industry as a drag artist, Mars. Mars is one of my very first drag sisters alongside Bonnie and Clyde. So we had met in the George in Dublin. She was doing a Davina Divine is a St. McQueen in Ireland. And she had this competition called a Davina Divine Apprentice, like the Apprentice show, finding like Ireland's next, I suppose, in that term, drag superstar. Eris Blackstone was in the same season. There was some staple Irish queens in London that were in this competition. So we were kind of on the verge of our own queer, discovery and expression at the same era. I was about a year or a year and a half behind. When I moved to London, it was for a Horrible Histories TV production, season 8 with CBBC, and I was a TV trainee. So I got my first professional makeup job because I did do a 6-month diploma in Ireland. Once I came out and said I want to try makeup, I'm discovering drag at the same time. Haven't done it myself yet. Mars put me in drag for the very first time. Classic time of the year. It was Halloween 2018. And I remember going to a popcorn and I saw Bones for the very first time. I remember seeing Kane and Eris and Mars is in drag. And there is pictures for sure. And you can, by full confidence, go dig deep, mama, and find the tea. And that's how JMac began. And it was a very interesting year and a half before, March 2020, that JMac was forever just being, reborn and restyled and trying to make more of a club kid drag aesthetic. That's where I envision myself being. And I always wonder if the pandemic hadn't happened or a certain particular show, would I still have embodied it? Because yes, I'm a makeup artist. I would say that encapsulates being a drag artist. For how much I do of drag now, subjective, we know. But it's still something that I would never say I want to return to. It's just the way my kind of trajectory of my professional work and career, which is more or less very full time now. I know I need to recreate space to be in touch with it. But yeah, that's how it started, the drag journey.
No wonder you made a name for yourself so quickly with so many of those staples that you were like friends with, like Mars, Harris, Bones. Also, Bones being around that long ago, how old was she? Like 3? Like
year. She was like 6 months a year because she broke out in 2017. And these are just names I remember. First encounters, just, I'll never forget the early on days because it was like you never forget your first real experience on any sort of level of life, right? So that first real queer immersive experience, first time in drag, first time embodying going to a club in drag, feeling more part of it than like a spectator. I'll just never forget those early days. And for people, they might go, "Oh my god, yeah, that night out," and they might go, "God, you were going that deep in your mind." Like some people might not even remember that happening. Because there were so many other artists at the top of my head. My name game is awful. I've got such a shit memory for names, but there were so many more iconic names there. I remember, I think Jodie Harsh was there as well. But yeah, that really, embodied me saying, okay, I'm accepting myself as a queer person way more than ever before. I'm accepting whatever way I decide to, express myself creatively as an artist and makeup through drag makeup. And then I started to take on some performances. I remember going to Stella Marbus's Cookie Monster and being part of the Cookie Monster entourage that would be in Bethel Men's Bethnal Green Working Men's Club. There was some bars, the Glass House Cocktail Bar in Shoreditch. There was a few other spaces, and there's so many eclectic club kid DJs, performers, some that I don't live in the country anymore, but I still see them on their socials. It's wild to think that was a time where the queer club scene felt quite electric. If I'm right or wrong, you might agree, compared to what resurgence there is post-COVID. And yet this is literally, we had 12 months left before the inevitable, somewhat end of the world was about to spring on us. Luke's Leica was another great friend. And I remember meeting Luke for the first time and thinking their artistry was insane. That inspired my style a lot. And all the negative spacing with the lashes, I was taking inspiration from a lot of different artists and just trying to play with it myself in a more like animated way. I would have never said that like I owned any certain style or design, because I was working as a makeup artist on different separate jobs, and those trainee jobs is what was literally trying to pay the bills to keep me in the UK.
No, I fully agree with you. The time, like before pre-COVID, how electric things. I remember going to the first cookie jar. Did you say? Yeah, cookie jar. Is it called cookie jar? Yeah,
Yeah,
cookie jar. It was like
cookie.
in some random venue in Shoreditch somewhere, like upstairs somewhere. It wasn't
Yeah,
like any of the ones you mentioned. So I remember Charity Case was there and she complimented my outfit. And I was like, that's one, you know, like you're saying, those moments that you like remember, those random little things that probably no one else remembers, but those are little things you remember. Like this was obviously way before they were on Drag Race and things like that. But those little moments where, and I think around that time I was like experimenting way more with like my makeup and obviously going to like somewhere like Cookie Jar, was dressing up more. I think I bought a crown and stuck party rings on it. And I was
I
like,
love.
that was my outfit. And like things like that, like those kind of weird formative moments that you have. But for
Yeah.
other people, like you said, wouldn't really remember them. But for you, you remember those little kind of moments.
And you know what? Just on the point of that, I think about the great designers in our industry now. Like you look at the likes of Val Garland, you look at like the Nick and Sam Knights, and the people that experience like the Blitz Cup era, and Philip Tracy, and the, you know, St. Martin's like creatives of the late 80s and 90s that were doing a lot more club kid when it was migrating from like what was in New York to London. How they would just dress up and use, like, you know, Vivian Westwood, even the rags and riches to create something out of nothing, and it was in a queer expressive format that felt very present only 5 or 6 years ago, right before COVID. And I always remember the same week that I had done my first ever drag look, it was without hair. So it was Club Kitty. I did a Club Kitty esque look before. That sounds very playful. Club Kitty esque. But I did that look, and then I remember saying, okay, I need to do hair, bitch. And I was like, I want to do drag, but it was never like straight conventional. The next weekend, because it was Halloween, I did this like stoned sculptress look with a blonde kind of like Gaga updo. I was trying to do Born This Way with the skull imprint, but you know, jammed it up because hashtag gay. And I went with Mars to Egg London. God, you know, R.I.P. And I remember she said, "Oh my God, there's Charity Case and there's Virgin X." And they came right into the green room and they were like, "Hi, I'm Charity, I'm Virgin." And I was like, "Oh my God, I heard so much the staple," because the queer people in the community were like bigger than any celebrity. They were the meccas to me. This is where I was like, holy shit, this is my, I don't know, NFL, like, you know, sports player. The stars. And they were just like, "Hi, so nice to meet you." And it's so funny when I look back to that time, how relevant but important it felt. I remember being in the smoking area, and this makeup designer by the name Beverly Pond Jones came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, darling." She's like, "Look at your tits, look at your face, the hair." And it was all the lashes with the gems. And she booked me on a commercial job for Tesco, where I was assisting another amazing designer, her good friend Freddie Stoppler, who was David Bowie's artist in his late 90s, 2000s period. So I was like, holy shit, there's a degree of separation that's making my mind blow right now, because if I don't talk about it much, but Bowie is a big inspiration. It was a big source for me when I did glow up. My dad loves his music, so does my mom. And to have that one step of someone associated to them by this point, because he'd already passed by 2 years in 2016, I was like, this is wild. And it was all happening in like the first month when I moved to London, because I was just going out all the time. And those moments are just so important, because those designers, they were in the shtick of it. I find that there's a time gone that we, you know, how do we recreate it for our own generation now, per se, or even what I'm looking back on the past 5 or 6 years. It feels like a heyday when we're, you know, I'm in a different time in my life, growing into being a designing artist, and I just always think about those, you know, the more lived and experience wise bosses when they looked at like the stuff that we were creating, and they, you know, are designers for big jobs. That's what kept me in the UK.
Yeah, yeah, it felt like a very creative whirlwind of a time that yeah, it doesn't feel like it's around as much anymore. I'm not saying it isn't there. I'm sure there's people doing it, but I guess it doesn't feel like there's a much of a buzz around it as much as there was before, which is sad.
It probably is like a shift in generation where I don't go out half as much as I used to. And this is what I suppose is the footwork for me when the year 2019 came along and I saw a glow up, and that inevitably happened. And I was using the experiences and like the lived in moments that I was highly in my creative process. So what's to say that there's someone that basically who's 10 years younger than me is 21, and they're out in whatever relevant club scene, underground kind of, queer spaces that there are, or there's other fresh new talent, their mind is just exploding, wanting creating crazy work. Maybe yes, it's not as the venues, I think, and the spaces are a lot more limited now. That might make a difference. But I would like to think that there's not as, a limited outreach, or there's not a lack of creative sources or queer people here. It feels like our space for existence isn't as relevant, like, prominent as it's been, pre-COVID.
I also think as well, pre-COVID, Drag Race UK also wasn't as big of a thing here, and I think that's also changed a lot of that side of like queer nightlife and drag and what people want to do with drag. Obviously, there are still people doing alternative drag forms and stuff like that, but the big focus and where a lot of the energy is now for a lot of people, and where I guess a lot of the money is too, is the traditional femme drag that we see on Drag Race, which I think has kind of not like killed off the focus on that creative side of things.
Mm-hmm. You know, for myself and my work, I would relate in I found that my own aesthetic and drive as an artist has become a lot more clean. It's a lot more very heavily work related. Like I do more soft makeup for clients, even for myself. And just this week gone by, I sat down and I did like a JMac-esque creative look for the first time in, I'm going to say, 18 months to 24 months properly. The last time I felt I was on such a creative like agenda was when I was part of like Drag Race Season 4's franchise, working with some of the queens and, creating designs and painting some of the girls and doing fun big looks. And I was like resurging that creativity pre-COVID on others, because I was so heavily wanting to do makeup on other people, because I still said post show glow up. I'm not just a, by respect, an influencer content creator. I have that platform, but I still and always want to be a makeup artist. So I was doing it more on others. And my partner that I'm with for now over a year, last week he said, "Oh my God, this is like the first look per se I'm seeing you do." And we're together now, like, no, we've done a lap around the sun. And he just said, like, how do you feel about it? And I said, it's good. It's like without when you kind of like, break the seal, it gives me focus to just reintroduce that creative spark or that whole look energy back into my style and artistry again. So I find it quite, poignant that this is where we're having this conversation. Because if I'm sitting at home today, what's to say that I don't do a look? I might even do like a tie-dye kind of look to this. You can put visuals to this. I'm wearing like a Knuff Snuggie from like the Barbie franchise, and it's all like fluffy tie-dyed. I think it'd be cool to do a fun kind of look like this today. And I feel a bit more encouraged just after getting out of my comfort zone and doing something creative last week for the first time in ages.
It's crazy how those little moments have like such a ripple effect though, right? Like you get used to doing what you're doing, you get used to doing what you're paid for, which I'm guessing is a lot of the time it's more like the more subtlety side of things, or the more like standard beauty in inverted commas. And you do that one thing that kind of like triggers something that you used to enjoy, and then it kind of really can like change your mindset on things.
Yeah. And that's just what has happened for me of recent.
And obviously you've got a big following online. How do you balance that? We a lot of the time these days we get confused with the idea that you have to be an influencer to be able to be a makeup artist. And I think as much as Glow Up is a great show, it kind of has a part to play in that, where it kind of does revolve a lot around that influencer culture as well. And you don't need to be an influencer to be a makeup artist and to be a successful makeup artist as well.
Correct. Let me say this. There was a timing that we were quite fortunate with our season when the pandemic happened, and we filmed in 2019. And I know I did it for the love of just wanting to, challenge myself, because I was, like I said, I grew up in a very competitive environment. I was always willing to learn from my mistakes and not be too proud about, well, I went onto national TV and wasn't, you know, too embarrassed to flop a lot, but then also learn and fight my way to the finale. Had I never done it, what's to say if I have like, I don't know, 10K, like 2,000 followers? I had 1,500 before the show in April 2020. And I often still see myself as the person that could have two followers. That's where I've learned to not put myself under pressure to have to be following a certain like clickbaited routine with my social platform. And it's changed. I remember the pandemic, I had nothing else to do but just do looks and create loads of content and feel like I was in that affluential flow of creating content. And it's a full-time job.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's also that kind of the other side of it. Like it's not you're not going to get on the show and then become a successful makeup artist from it either. Like you have to work for it afterwards as well as like you're saying. There is that kind of an idea around a lot of people who've been on Glow Up that the industry then kind of like, oh, you've been on the show. They kind of there's a bit of like that side eye side of things. But there's also that idea of like just getting on the show doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Like I've spoken to enough ex-contestants on the show who are still struggling now, maybe struggling even more so from being on this show. And it's like, actually, there's a lot of work you have to put into it afterwards. And just getting on Netflix doesn't mean you're going to be a successful either influencer or makeup artist too.
Yeah, I would agree that, I've worked so much harder in the past 2 to 3 years post show. Your 15 minutes of fame, quote unquote, or even the 15 years before you find the real groundwork success. Like I'm on that journey now. And I know I speak for every one of us that is probably part of that alumni. And again, if you're not, there's so many like artists that are working so hard in the industry. It's so competitive. You have to give it your all.
Definitely. And like even like you said, like you don't need to be on the show. There's so many people who are successful in the field, whatever that means to you anyway. But like you look at like so many of like the like global makeup artists at MAC or senior makeup artists, a lot of them have like under 10K followers and they're at like the top end of their like the career and that side of things or in other brands as well. You can become super high up and be someone's like second in command in terms of the makeup artistry interaction within that company
Mhm.
or whatever and still not be have to go on a TV show or have to have 30,000 followers.
Yep. And you know what? I agree. And I respect so many artists. Like some of the best people have no socials and they're the best socialites and the best storytellers and have the best knowledge and experience in the industry. And they're the ones I gravitate towards.
Would you ever go back to doing All Stars on Glow Up?
Absolutely. Oh my God. I had so much fun when I did it. I would need time to prepare for it because I love to prepare. I can't do things entirely on the fly because I prepared way more for Globe than I probably have even given information to because I wanted it and I wanted to do well. And yeah, I would do it. But if it came along, I would prepare for it. And I think that I have, a different mind's eye. I'd spoken to another alum recently where we thought about how would it work. And I think it would be interesting to keep contestants. And here's a pitch, I guess. Having all of us together, kind of like the All Stars season 7, where no one is eliminated, but yet we were there on maybe a score point system or, you know, scoring system, archiving, our track record of what our work is like and being set up for different challenges because we've all gone on the alumni from the show to do different things. But I would love it. Of course I would. The show is listed technically as a factual entertainment show rather than reality. And that's probably where there has been hurdles for the show itself in production to try to maintain and respect the ethos of the industry. That it's not like kind of a my show pony.
What's next for JMac? What's on the cards? What are we like thinking of doing? What are you passionate about? What is the next kind of things you've got your mind set on?
Baby, I'm not short of words. I can talk on a podium until the cows come home. I guess that's that stage presence and that sense of attention that came from drag. So I'm using it in other ways. My drag is very much disguised as a camp quirky teaching element and masterclasses. I've loved doing so much more masterclasses now in the past year and a half. And I think that is what is currently happening slash is next in JMax books.
I think okay, we're coming up to the end now. The one question I like to ask everyone on the podcast is what was the first piece of makeup that you either bought or was bought for you, if you can remember?
It was neither bought nor bought for me because bitch I stole my makeup from my cousin's kits and my mom, and that is no cry of a lie. It was a MAC, funny enough, a MAC eyelash curler and the Rimmel London Soft Kohl eyeliner pencil. All it was to me was those eyeliner, smudge kohl liner like wings like Amy Winehouse. And then when I discovered a curler at 16, sorry to the boys in school because I lied about it and I got them into trouble sometimes when they found a curler and they'd bully me and I'd say that was plotted there. And I, in my defense, did set up some boys to get into trouble because I was so scared to admit the truth. And I was 16, we make mistakes, and it's honesty, babe. I love the curler and it's still on brand today. These lashes, oh my god, get me into trouble and out of trouble at the same time.
I love that. Yeah, the eyes were. I think like eyes are such a go-to for you as well, though. Like I feel like when I look at like a lot of the work you do, especially like when you're painting the girls, the eyes are always like that's the one J Mac thing. I'm like, there you can tell James has done the eyes there. Like,
It is a sharp butter knife edged eye makeup look, and that would be my safe hit, my Barbie land for life.
yeah, love it. Well, yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for creating this platform and space. There's never not enough conversations being had, and I'm very grateful to have you as a friend, a solace, and support in the community. And this is what I imagined when I was younger, wanting to have, queer space and just a community around me when I was in countryside Ireland. And yeah, can never not be too grateful for it. So thank you, Darren.
And that's all we've got time for this month on the podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this second part of this chat. If you haven't listened to the first part, go back to last month's episode, listen to that there. James was an incredible guest, had such a great time chatting with them, and make sure you follow them all online if you're not already. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next month. Bye.